Thank you, distinguished co-chairs and delegates. I am Eleanor Acer, Senior Director for Refugee Protection at Human Rights First, a U.S.-based organization. We advocate for U.S. leadership on human rights. We also partner with private law firms to provide pro bono counsel to refugees and to immigrants. We welcome the commitments in the New York Declaration to protect the human rights of all persons, in transit and after arrival, and all refugee and migrant children, regardless of their status. While refugees and migrants are entitled to protections under international law, too often border, transit, arrival, and post-arrival interactions are conducted as though they occur in rights-free zones. It is precisely in times and in places where adherence to international law is most needed that the temptation to circumvent it can be greatest. Respect for human rights and refugee law is essential to securing stability and security. It also benefits host states and communities. Civil society groups have expressed disappointment that the Declaration does not include more concrete commitments, and that some states worked to include language that appeared aimed at undercutting existing human rights standards, including for children. The civil society statement, Rising to the Challenge, joined by Human Rights First and over 80 other groups, outlines recommendations to translate the Declaration's commitments to a rights-based, age- and gender-sensitive plan of action. With respect to this roundtable's focus, I urge that states review and revise national border policies to uphold the human rights of all people. States must immediately end policies and practices that violate non-refoulement obligations and undermine access to asylum, including accelerated or summary procedures that cut corners, leading to return or rejection of persons entitled to protection. States should immediately act to save lives on land and sea, while also ensuring access to international protection. States should implement identification and referral tools for use at borders and after arrival to protect children, torture and trauma survivors, victims of trafficking, survivors of sexual and gender-based violence, and other vulnerable individuals. State cooperation or assistance focused on stemming the flow without prioritizing access to effective protection will ultimately prove counterproductive from both rights and migration management perspectives. Efforts to develop guidelines and principles on migrants in vulnerable situations must reinforce, not undercut, existing fundamental rights and should not signal at all that such rights are not binding. The state-led process referenced in paragraph 52 of the Declaration should include civil society and migrants groups and recognize that migrants in vulnerable situations require protection as well as assistance. As we sit here today, vulnerable refugees and migrants are held in migration detention around the world. States should end detention that is inconsistent with human rights and refugee law. Human Rights First and other groups call on states to fulfill the commitment in the New York Declaration to work to end the practice of child immigration detention. As the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child and UN experts have confirmed, the detention of a child on the basis of their or their parents' immigration status is never in the child's best interests and may amount to cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment or punishment. States can implement rights-based alternatives for the entire family in cases where needed. In this connection, I urge support for the efforts of the Interagency Working Group, UNICEF, and the International Detention Coalition, including tomorrow's high-level roundtable on working together to end child immigration detention. In closing, I will share the words of some children, ages 12 to 16, who have been held in immigration detention for about a year already, in a facility a few hours' drive from this building. It pains us, they wrote, to know that the school year is starting and that we are imprisoned. We can't concentrate because of the frustration that we feel locked up here like criminals, when in reality, we are innocent. I urge prompt action to end the detention of children, and I thank you for your commitment to addressing these critical issues.
I thank Ms. Eleanor Acer, Senior Director of Refugee Protection for Human Rights First, for her statement.